Hey everybody, my name is Stitch. Welcome back to another episode of CO Select. Today we are playing a tier 3 match on Small Garden House. A Small Garden House is actually a pretty new addition to the map pool in Fog Global League. If you are a Fog League player, you probably played this map about 5 times already, because obviously the system generally ways to give you maps that are it offers you up your least played maps whenever it can. And then obviously because this map was just added, everybody had 0 games on it. So I know, at least me personally, I think I've already played this map like 6 times or something, and I got dealt it like 4 or 5 times in a row, which is kind of funny, because it's actually a remix of an original map called Small Garden. It's basically a slight variation of it with so some terrain changes. Basically, I think the addition of these silos, I think these this kind of like river was extended. Well, this ocean shoal thing was extended a bit. And also, player 2 was given an additional starting infantry, and player 1 was actually given a starting infantry, which is pretty uncommon, slash uncharacteristic for League maps. It's very uncommon for player 1 to have an initial infantry, but Small Garden House does offer that. I think the main reason is because it tries to push you into being a bit stronger on one side. I think before the map was not. Oh, also they added blackboats to the HQ, which is quite a big change as well. I think before Small Garden was a little bit weird. I don't think I ever covered it, but the map, I don't know, it was very strange to kind of like dictate which side you wanted to play through. I mean, I guess that's fairly standard for Fog, but most Fog maps kind of weigh you to an initial side. But obviously, because Small Garden House is a 2 base, you don't really have as much of a pull, and the airport is very isolated, meaning even though you have like a 1 base, 1 airport side, quote unquote, the airport doesn't really reinforce either side particularly effectively due to the nature of the pipes in this lower area, which definitely prohibited you from getting air units to anywhere relevant in a reasonable amount of time. The map itself, yeah, I mean, nowadays, I think Small Garden House, compared to Small Garden, is a little bit more active. Fairly interesting, but I think about the map is that contested properties are fairly scarce. Even though it looks quite contestable, these center properties are pretty hard to get to. These kind of central 8. Can I count? Is that 6? These central 6. I'll do better. So you're mostly playing, I think, kind of for these 3 near the HQs are kind of the ones you actually want to contest. It's a little bit harder to push these center 2 because this base reinforces very effectively, and even this one gets there in 2 turns. So normally you're trying to play the kind of these outside ones. You have these 2 very forward towers, and also these 2 basically safe towers, can't be contested, but it's a 4 tower map, 2 towers each side. But the way these towers are dealt is kind of just depending on how the players go for them. Some players you'll find will rush for them very aggressively. Some players will play for economy and then contest them later, which is generally what I opt for. Normally it's easier to contest them in the future when you can build more tanks and stuff like that, and then having an early 10% bonus generally doesn't affect that much unless you're going for like super aggressive infantry trades or recon poke or something like this. So while obviously you do want to try and secure 2 towers throughout the game, personally I don't rush for them, but I've definitely run into players who do. I'm playing Kindle today on Yellow Comet. I've actually been playing a fair bit of Yellow Comet lately. I don't know, I randomly had a game, I think it was actually on Small Garden, where I forgot to change my country, and I got Yellow Comet, and I was like, huh, Yellow Comet looks kind of cool, actually. So, I'm just randomly playing Yellow Comet on the side of playing Cobalt Ice. But yeah, I'm playing Kindle today. Kindle's day today is she gets a 40% firepower bonus on urban terrain, which is defined as any tile that is capturable, essentially. Factories, cities, comm towers, ports, everything like this. Her regular power is Urban Blight, very infamous, deals 3 HP mass damage to all enemy units that are currently stationed on urban terrain, as well as increasing her firepower bonus from 40 to 80% for the turn. And then her superpower is High Society, which gives her a 3% firepower bonus to all units for every city that she currently owns, and then additionally increases her firepower bonus to 130% on urban terrain, which is just actually absurd. And I'm sure, well, in previous videos I've showcased just the crazy amount of damage you do. You basically, in that kind of setup, most units just one shot their counterparts if they're sat on a city, and it just, the damage numbers become absurd. So anyway, my opponent Lunar Halo is playing Andy. Andy is kind of interesting CO in tier 3, basically one of the better stalling COs. No day-to-day bonus. Regular power is hyper repair, I think, and it heals all of his units for 2 HP. And then super power is hyper upgrade, heals all units of 5 HP, gives them a 10 or additional 20% firepower bonus, or 10% firepower bonus. I think it's 10% with the 10% from powers, and additional +1 movement. Incredibly strong power. The way Andy works generally is you want to be patient, taking kind of even trades without losing units, charging up bar, and then you hit hyper upgrade, you heal all of your damage units to like full or 7+ HP, and then you just ram into the enemy with a massive health advantage because you assume that they've lost a lot of health from trading as well. So generally he's more of a stall kind of CEO, building up a big army, getting a big hyper upgrade, repairing all of his units, and getting really effective trades in one turn. So yeah, this matchup is a lot about, generally Kindle want to be a lot more aggressive, trying to take early fights from properties to kind of kill Andy's units, take an early lead maybe with Urban Blight, and then try and mitigate the amount of damage you take when the hyper upgrade turn does come out. I went for Kindle on this map because this map is quite property focused. There's a lot of fights around the contested properties that I pointed out. Because there's not many contested properties, I think that could generally make Kindle a bit stronger, because it gives your opponent less places to fight over, because they have to fight over these predetermined locations kind of. But I think Andy has like a place on this map as well. You can kind of stall it out. Like I say, there's only a few contested properties, which again also kind of favors stall. It's really interesting how it kind of like works at both sides, I think. But overall, yeah, this matchup is generally going to be looking for me to get a bit aggressive in the early game, trying to get an early lead, and then bully out my opponent to the point where hyper upgrade does not get that much value. So let's get into it, shall we? Overall, doing well today. I've got a bit of a crick in my neck from sleeping weird. Pretty unfortunate. So my opponent actually chooses to go down first instead of going for the efficient property. That's the one I go for. And you see, they are actually a player that is rushing for this comm tower. I did mention this. Some players will just rush for the comm tower, try and cap it as soon as possible, because they are quite contestable. Like I said, none of them are really dictated. So, like, neither one is particularly... Like, this one is obviously... I guess it's 4 moves away for me, and 3 moves from my opponent, but... there's so many cities here to capture that my opponent is kind of giving up on. They even skipped this chain to put another infantry on the side as well. It's really interesting. You see, I'm actually just going... pretty much full economy, like I mentioned. I prefer to do that personally. But yeah, they are actually rushing for the comm tower. I actually give up this capture, go for the city. Just kind of like ideal like movement to get to anyway. So yeah, you see I even delay this comm tower because I know I'm not going to be fighting. Like I tell you guys, always prioritize comm towers to try and finish on the turn when you're actually taking engagements, because that's when they're relevant, right? 10% firepower isn't doing anything if you're not hitting anything. So my first tank comes on the right side. My opponent's first tank is also on the right side, so we should be meeting, you would imagine. So I'm already moving down, going for these captures on the airports. You see I'm a little bit ahead economy-wise. Because I'll actually be at 10k next turn. My opponent's only going up to 8k here. Well, I'm already at 10k. I'll be at 11k next turn. And my opponent is only going up to... So I'm already 3,000 ahead of my opponent. And you kind of see that's the difference between racing for this comm tower and just kind of playing an economic opener like I am. And you maybe notice that I end up just getting kind of better builds in the long run as a result. So I do end up picking up an early artillery here because I wanted to kind of run down this left side. You don't really like you can't really be sure what the opponent is doing, but I kind of always assume everybody's just playing economic as well. So I actually walk on the comm tower here, just go for the capture, and I end up revealing that my opponent's captured it. So that gives me a lot of information that they probably have aggressive infantry on this location. They've no doubt skipped cities to get here. So I already know that I have a slight economic lead. I pull a tank up, starting to get this artillery in position as I start pushing units onto the left. This should also hopefully reveal if my opponent has vehicles in the area, and it does. I see the tank, so I know the first tank is on the right side. So I'm feeling pretty fine about that. I know this left side should be pretty safe. Even though they race for this comm tower, I feel pretty confident they haven't gone for the left comm tower because the vehicles came out here, which means they're probably reinforcing this right side area. A lot of fog is about kind of like mathematically, getting... I guess not... It is like mathematic and calculation, but calculating where your opponent's units are with regard to what they reveal. And in this instance, I know that the second tank could be coming down here, but they won't be aggressively pushing this area yet. So I'm moving infantry up as well to reveal that it's in fact completely neutral on the comm tower. Got a reinforcing tank coming up the side. I start capturing the city, getting the artillery in position to help defend it. It's a little bit exposed. There's definitely a way where my opponent just runs down and ends up revealing, but I feel like I would be surprised if the artillery gets revealed, because this infantry would have to just like run into these woods or something, like just three directly down, just to kind of reveal the area. But it's just like kind of throwing an infantry away in theory, you know. So while it is a little bit of an aggressive / exposed position, I think overall I feel like, you know, my opponent would have to do something really risky to actually get a reveal, unless they went for a really early recon. But I've already seen a tank, so I know they didn't do that. That's another thing, is I could also surmise that they don't have an aggressive recon from early days as well. Once again, just kind of like, yeah, calculating that based on the units that my opponent has revealed. So because I saw the tank, I know that there's no recon here to scout this area immediately. Although they could have gone for the next turns, but based on the funding on this map, it's pretty unlikely. So they do end up having 2 tanks here defending. I'm going to get this contested property, so that's pretty good. My opponent just did get the trade off. But you see, like, I've already got the poor... Like, I'm at 15k to 14, and I'll be plus 2 cities next turn. My opponent's missing these 2. They haven't got to this city yet. They went for a really, really interesting, and I'd say fairly inefficient capture route, to be honest. I have this one coming up as well, this airport. So I think, you know, economy-wise, my capture phase definitely went better than my opponents did. So I do end up currently having more money. I pick up a recon on this right side because I've already got I've got 2 tanks here. I've got the artillery. I'm ready to start scouting out, maybe seeing if I can get some aggressive damage. Like I said, I do want to be trying to get some early hits in this matchup, getting some aggressive trades if I can. You see, we're very mirrored in our army designs, to be honest, but you can already see that I am a tank ahead. 2 tanks ahead, in fact. Okay, I guess my opponent has a build this turn. And they end up going for the first copter as well. I do end up catching this tank as it walks past the woods. Like I say, always really good habit to be checking the replay, making sure that you spot out any enemy units. So I capture the city. I move up into the woods. I end up getting trapped, but I put it really aggressively postures his infantry. So I do end up revealing it. I pull my recon up to, and I see the tank on the comm tower. Moving some tanks forwards. So you see, I'm going to go for an attack on this infantry, but one thing you notice, and I think this is something I've got a lot better at in Fog, is when I go for this attack, I immediately start pooling my other tanks into the relevant area. I think it's a really good habit to get into, is having your tanks in a way that you can kind of reposition them to be central to cover any kind of early engagement you go for in Fog. So in this instance, I know that I have to hit with this tank from the top side because I need to hit from the infantry to get the one shot, right? And so I know it's going to be fairly exposed. So I immediately pull 2 more tanks to kind of cover this tank. So if my opponent does try to go for a counter hit, I already have a lot of units in position. I even get the artillery in the forest in a really great aggressive position. Covers this city as well if my opponent tries to sit on it. Put my infantry into the woods up here. And I built my first medium tank. Mediums are really, really good on 2 bases generally. Teching up aggressively can be pretty impactful. And it's another lesson I've learned from Fog. I'm sure you'll remember that FKZY game where I talked about the really aggressive medium tank tech catching me off guard and putting me really far behind. And it's definitely a habit I've grown into. I think aggressive teching in Fog is something that can be really valuable. Especially once you get together, especially in a 2-base format where I only have like I have 18k this turn. It's very hard to get an efficient buy without pooling a bunch of money. And I do still think I'm a little bit ahead economy-wise because my opponent's early game, and I definitely am. Just based off the kind of like the way I've got my captures. You know, they haven't even started getting to this city yet, except for this. So I want to take advantage of my funding. So I have 70k this turn, so I just go medium infantry and get a really aggressive early medium buy. So Recon comes down here, reveals my tank, see if my opponent goes for a counterattack. But like I said, you know, I make this completely safe by the way that I pulled my units. And look at this, the great way. Like, I mean, it's part of it just because the recon went here, but I'm perfectly out of vision right now. My opponent can literally see 2 units. They put this infantry on the city, which I do have vision of. So I finish my cap. I just go for an RT here, and I move my infantry up to just hit the city. Because again, it's the same thing, right? If my opponent hits this infantry, I have this RT in such a great spot. And I think this really solid artillery position is doing me a lot of favors. Pull a few more units around it. I build my first copter. I grab an anti-air because I'm expecting, you know, air play from my opponent at this point. I didn't realize how much earlier they'd gone for their copter. Like, fairly inefficiently, but, you know, sometimes people could surprise you when they go for like an inefficient route to get to the airport or something, and they get a really early bar in their unit. So I just kind of like predictably build my anti-air. I end up revealing this infantry of the city with a little bit of, you know, forward scouting position. Rotate the infantry out of the woods, put a recon here just to get a bit more valuable information. And I end up walling here because I don't want to expose his infantry too much because my opponent can now see it. So this recon moves on to the city, takes a strike at my infantry. Honestly, my opponent should know that I have an artillery in this area based off the last turn, if they looked at the replay. So kind of interesting that they went for this attack, I think. But they do have a copter coming through, so yeah, they have some reinforcing units. You see they're also doing what I do. They pull their tanks towards the center to kind of cover this attack. But I am obviously going to get a very big hit. But they do have a pretty sizable army building in the middle. But clearly I have a slight advantage here. Obviously they have 2 artillery, but I do have a medium tank sitting in this area. And if I'm able to get it in a safe position to get aggressive shots off, it can be really painful for my opponent. They also choose to go for this first strike on the left, which I thought was kind of interesting. So yeah, I have a lot of vision with the recon that's there. I take a first strike on this tank, end up 2-hit KOing it. Bring around the recon to finish off the recon. They're going for the artillery. Got this anti-air covering some of these units. I moved this infantry up, which reveals the artillery in the woods. I think I may, yeah, I saw the artillery with my recon from this position as well. So I also knew there was an artillery here. So I immediately get the punish off of that. I pull my medium tank into the woods, so this is why I feel really confident in this attack as well. It's definitely a world where my opponent could have matched me and also had a medium tank or something, but this is kind of like the power of the aggressive tacking, is it lets me take this kind of aggressive approach and then feel really confident that even if my opponent counterattacks, I'm going to win. Because I have this really forward medium tank that my opponent has no awareness about. So it could give me an opportunity to get a very aggressive hit. I take 2 first strikes on these infantry. And yeah, you just see me still rotating my tanks towards this area. I end up taking a strike back on this infantry. I could have gone further here, but I don't know how many units my opponent has. I don't want to get caught on the city. So I end up just taking a hit back and pulling this infantry back to get healed. So yeah, pretty solid fights here for me so far. You see I'm actually really ahead in unit value right now. I did manage to pick up a tank, so my opponent once again moves on to this city tower, even still knowing, well, they should know that I have an artillery here, so, and they end up putting the copter in the one place that my anti-air can't reach. I felt really sad about this. Oh wait, can I reach it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, it's the one spot that my anti-air, well, the one unit that my anti-air didn't cover was this tank, so they managed to get a hit on the tank that, without any knowledge of my anti-air, they managed to get the one that I couldn't protect. So that was really unfortunate. Move another tank into my artillery range. Yeah, they're just getting some solid counter hits here. I won't deny. They even picked up an infantry with the artillery. They got an anti-air moving forwards, but they do reveal it because of my my recon here. But I don't see this copter coming, so there is another copter on the way. They pull this infantry back to get healed. They go for another first strike here. Really aggressive infantry trading here on the left from my opponent, especially when they don't have any units in this area. You know, I already have an infantry advantage. And then I even have a tank here, but I suppose I don't know about it. Another copter coming out. And they go for a double infantry copter build. Actually saving quite a lot of money this turn. So I feel like these aggressive turns where, yeah, in the future as well, I probably wouldn't have gone for like the medium tank when I was less experienced with Frog, but I feel like this kind of turn is a really good medium tank drop for my opponent, especially for a CEO like Andy who loves to have like big tech units, like big bulky tanks that could take a lot of punishment, give him a lot of power generation, and then drop a really aggressive hyper upgrade to give him a lot of value. So this turn I ended up dropping Urban Blight. Mainly because his tank was on the city. It gives me a slightly better attack. I used the artillery to hit the city tank. I think it was maybe a mistake. I maybe should have hit the tank on the road instead, which would have been a bit more effective usage. But then I swing the medium tank in anyway, I suppose, to get the big hit. Get a one shot on the road tank. I just slide this tank straight in. I think I know that my opponent has an indirect over here somewhere, but I'm assuming it's not a rocket, and I'm thinking it's probably an artillery in the same forest that I have it. So I feel really confident just take these aggressive hits. I end up picking up this infantry with my infantry. Because if this artillery was to sit here and just rail infantry, I'm feeling pretty fine about it, you know. I take a first strike on this tank. I finally reveal my tank here on the left. And then use these infantry to clean up my opponent's infantry. Trying to maintain a full HP one so I can actually threaten the city capture. I start capturing the center property. And I move these infantry up as well. Once again, just kind of baiting artillery attacks or wasting time. And maybe even threatening something like this city really aggressively or something. I'm feeling really good about this fight now that I have the medium tank exposed. And, you know, I have an anti-air covering all these units, and I'm feeling pretty confident. Anti-air and a copter, because I know there's at least one copter in this area. Could be a second. Start healing this tank on the side as well. I built a second medium tank and a tank, because I had a bunch of money this turn. Could have been a Neo infantry buy. I think it might be better to go Neo infantry, to be honest. But I think both are fine. I think I was feeling a little bit worried about my tank count. I only had 5 so far, so... And yeah, this is the turn where iPipe upgrade has come out. Definitely, I definitely left a few units alive. This is definitely something you have to be cautious of, is like this kind of first strike is not super effective against Andy because my opponent will then just heal it with super next turn. So maybe this attack was a bit wasted. I think lowering the anti-air is still pretty valuable though. So my opponent does use the artillery to take out this infantry here. You move another infantry up to kill the infantry on the city. And all these infantry down here got healed as well, so that's definitely pretty valuable for my opponent. You really want to try and maximize the amount of actual finishing hits you get on your opponent's unit, your opponent's units when they're playing Andy. Copters are moving forward, getting some first strikes on my tanks, but I have units to counter hit this. I do lose a tank here, lose a second tank, but overall the damage from the super isn't that bad so far. Yeah, definitely could have been a worse super. I think only dropping 2 tanks for the whole super, it's not the end of the world, and I have some solid counter hits coming in. I used my day-to-day bonus to pick off these 2 infantry here. Bring another artillery forwards, got another tank reinforcing, got another medium reinforcing, interrupt this capture with a tank. And then I bring this anti-air up, pick off the copter on the, pick off the copter here on the right. My opponent actually built rockets here, by the way, which I think is pretty crazy. I used the medium tank to kill the anti-air, which enables my copter to come in and get this first strike. I just hit this infantry with my infantry, just playing really aggressive here, just trying to waste this artillery's time, to be honest, but it's a bit crazy. I don't think it's super worth it, but I am also kind of limiting the units that my opponent has to reinforce this left area a bit. And then I go for a tank copter infantry, first copter of the game. Second copter, actually, I already had a copter, I take it back. Obviously copters are a bit less effective than tanks, mainly for this reason you just saw, they get one shot by anti-air, so yeah, I do end up losing these infantry, but it does pull an infantry from the left side, which could expose the city a bit. This rocket is moving forwards, so really defensive buy from my opponent. You definitely can tell they feel like they're on the back end. They get a big hit on my anti-air, pull their copter back, and then finish off my copter with theirs. They end up join capping here, which is a bit ambitious, but not insanely so. They pull this artillery around, pulling another copter. My turn again. I once again have the Open charge. I'm going to drop it. Part of the value is to interrupt this capture a bit more effectively because it does let me finish it off with the tank. Pull this infantry onto the city to block it and get healed. I end up moving this tank into the woods, which does reveal this infantry and this tank. And then I go for a really aggressive attack, trying to secure, basically trying to trade some material life. I don't think my opponent has enough units here to just like fully kill these 2 units based on what I've seen here on the right. So I'm kind of like offering some material trade and then I'll get this city and then pull back. That's kind of what I'm aiming for. Any kind of scenario where you can kind of like force a trade without giving up physical units. Like if I'm just you know, words are really good. If I'm just offering like half an HP of a tank, right? Let's say they get 2 first strikes on these tanks and they both go down to like 5 HP. If I could then capture the city, pull back and heal the tanks, inevitably I'm coming out very ahead if my opponent can't force back into this area. So I even put this artillery in position to hit anything that interrupts, even though it is a bit exposed. Pull my second medium tank in to get a big hit on this infantry. And then I put my medium tank on the city to one-shot the artillery. I'm actually at rocket range and artillery range, so I didn't realize there'd be a rocket up here. So definitely a great bait from my opponent. Kind of caught me off guard. My anti-air narrowly managed to survive, so I do put it back to the city. You know, I always talk about 5 HP anti-airs. They're perfectly suitable against copters, so it's definitely not a unit that you want to give up very often if you have the chance to heal it on the front lines. So yeah, this city is kind of what I'm playing for mainly. I'm hoping to get this city, get an economic swing, pull back, build up a stronger army, and then come back. So yeah, my opponent gets a double indirect hit here. Feels really bad, lose a lot of health on the medium tank, and it is going to fall. And then yeah, this copter does swing over, gets a first strike on my tank. Another copter comes down, gets a first strike on my medium tank. And then this tank actually has to ignore this one to go for the interrupt, and it puts itself right in artillery range. This infantry comes down, trying to do some damage, but it literally gets a 0 damage roll. Feels pretty bad, but you see, I definitely got the value I was looking for here. Like, at the very least, I'm getting free material in return. But I do need to get some anti-air coverage over here on the left. So yeah, I do take a big hit on this tank, put it to 1 HP. I use my tank to finish off this infantry in the shoal, which also hides my tank in the woods again, and I bring the 2 HP tank over to pick off this infantry, and then I use my other tank to pick up this infantry, which should hopefully enable me to capture this city. You know, I'm always looking for this 1 city advantage that puts me ahead 2k a turn. You see I'm now pulling back on the right side. Focusing a lot more on the left side here, so I'm pivoting some of my army where I can. Trying to get my units back on cities. I get another medium and an infantry. My opponent's next turn, copter swings around, gets 1 damage, not gonna quite get the city. Pretty unfortunate stuff. I haven't seen the rocket yet from my opponent, but it is moving forwards. This copter moves in really aggressively and takes a swing on my tank. But I have actually managed to get the anti-air support in this area now, so I will be able to pick up that copter next turn. Another copter coming forwards. Yeah, I actually have a copter in range as well. I was thinking a lot about this turn and how I wanted to actually move my units. Especially because I still want to try and pressure this cap. I'm going to be 1 away next turn. If I manage to get the cap, it should be impossible for my opponent to interrupt it. I actually move this artillery over here as well. So after thinking a lot, I decided to go for the really aggressive copter with my anti-air. Use this copter to hit this one closer, puts it to 1 HP. I do have to finish it off though. I definitely made sure to be careful about this attack because my opponent is very close to hyper upgrade again. So yeah, in this kind of scenario where you take a copter trade, be really cautious if your opponent is close to hyper upgrade, because if I hadn't managed to finish this copter off, it would have got hyper upgraded. My opponent would have had a 7 HP and a 6 HP copter, which could easily trade into mine on the following turn. So definitely be careful in that kind of scenario. So I use my tank to finish off this 2 HP copter again. You know, any of my opponent's low HP units in the area, don't get into a full sense of security like you do with other COs where it's not important to finish them off. You know, oh, these units are just blocking, I should focus on the high HP units. With Andy, that's not an option. The units will get healed and they will just shred through your army because, you know, it's like they've just basically deployed practically fresh units from nowhere. So now I'm feeling confident about the left, so I start pushing up on the right again as well a bit. Pick up this infantry in the woods, and then I move this medium tank up aggressively. I've got the anti-air. This is the 1 HP anti-air, now chilling at 5 HP. Next time it'll be 7. Perfectly capable of taking out any copters at this point, especially from urban terrain. I have my new medium tank reinforcing this left side, just hoping I can finally get this capture. It's definitely not guaranteed, but my opponent will probably have to sack another tank to be able to hold it. So I'm getting so much material just from this left side. You can see the unit count now is super in my favor. I'm +9. And my opponent only has my opponent only has 12 unit count at this point. I'm plus 40k in unit value. So, you know, even though I'm not actually getting the property, I'm getting so much material for it instead. But just having this constant threat. So hyper upgrade does come out. Definitely not as valuable as it could have been because as I put it out, finishing off all my opponent's low HP units where I can. Honestly, I think they would have preferred to save this one. I think they feel a little bit pressured, so they feel like they have to drop it. They do finally have a medium tank coming down the center. And these tanks come around. They get a big hit on my tank and my artillery, but it looks like I am going to get an opening. Could they have actually got the interrupt with this infantry? 1, 2, 3, no. So I am finally going to get an opening to capture this city, which puts me in the economic lead. And like I said, I haven't actually lost any real material. I've just taken a lot of damage. If these units, if I can pull them out and survive and not get chased down, and since I have this reinforcing medium tank, should be possible, I can set up healing up my units, build a bigger army in the future, and then just kind of like thrive off my economic lead. My opponent actually goes for a aggressive hit with this copter, and they build a double infantry copter turn, saving a lot of money. 12k saved. It's crazy. So I bring this medium tank in, get a one shot on the tank, finally get the city capture, move this tank out of the way to push my anti-air forwards. Like I said, 7 HP anti-air totally takes out copters, no worries. I do have urban blight ready this turn, but I'm going to end up saving it. Position this medium tank in this forest. It is revealed by this recon, but it should be pretty safe in the forest, I think. Obviously, I still don't know about this rocket, but I think it'd be difficult for my opponent to get in the solid position. Get some really good hits here. Reveal this copter, which enables me to get a 7-3 trade due to the nature of the super defense, limiting how much damage I have. And now I have a solid force pushing up here on the right as well. Especially because I've really crippled my opponent's forces on the left, and I have this medium tank gunner holding the line. Very close to high society as well, if I do feel like that's a worthy option. See, my opponent's just pulling back here. They've given up on this left side, and they're doing a really aggressive Neo tank, mainly due to their surplus from the previous turn. Could be a problem in the future. This medium tank does reveal itself, interestingly enough, to my tanks. So I am aware that it's there. I guess I was thinking it could possibly be a bait. So I ended up just pulling back. Like I said, once again, I have an economic lead. You know, I got some good trades here. I got an aggressive army positioning. But at this point, I don't feel like I have to be too aggressive. So you see, I'm just pulling back, repairing my units, and then just getting some just taking advantage of the fact that I have an economic advantage. It's now kind of, the onus is on my opponent to kind of do something aggressive, to be able to kind of like regain control of the game. Otherwise, I'm slowly just going to amass a huge army by just having like slightly better purchases than every turn. You know, I'll be up in vehicles, up in infantry. Eventually, I'll be able to like push forwards and dominate the map. I do end up building a recon here because this is kind of the point where I definitely need more intel as I'm pushing forwards for indirects, for my mediums and stuff like this. My opponent pushes a bit of left here, gets trapped in these woods. So I just pick up this infantry, move some other units forwards, reveal the medium tank here, put an artillery in position to be able to aggressively attack it should it try to maintain this position, pull this recon forwards, and you see my opponent is inching towards this city. They do know they have to try and do something, so they're trying to build a small force to be able to pressure this city. I end up building a Neo myself at this point. Definitely could have built one earlier, I think. Would have been a better move, maybe. And I'm slowly pivoting my units to this right side, because this is kind of where I expect the fight to be, but my opponent is building a force here on the left as well, so they could definitely go for either. They're slowly repairing this battlecopter with the black bow, which I think is kind of funny. And they start trying to capture this left property, actually. Moving units forwards, they get some good trades. This artillery is in client positioning to deal with my medium tank, assuming that I go for the closer tank, which would be the more normal move, I think. Neo tank swerves around, ends up in the woods, so my opponent's hiding it really well that they have a really big Neo purchase here. And they're trying to throw out both contested properties at the same time, just so they can get one and kind of get back control of the game. I'm just going to move my recon forwards here, get the interrupt, put a tank on the city, slide my medium tank into the woods. Obviously is revealed by my opponent's recon, but like I said, pretty safe in the woods. And I have my Neo up here ready to counter hit. Use the medium tank just to get the interrupt on this infantry. I don't have much vision over here, to be honest, so there could have been artillery and stuff, but I end up getting fairly lucky. Use my copter to 2-hit KO this tank. Oh, not quite. Lives on 1 HP. And you see, I'm pulling some of my forces from the right over to the left in case my opponent does go for an aggressive push here. But I do have a really amassed force on this right side as well. And I do have high society charge, should it be a solid option. And especially at this point in the game, this is kind of the area where I think high society is a bit more relevant. Unless I see a really good urban blight value move. This is kind of more of an angle for high society, I think, just so I can kind of blow a hole in my opponent's army. So my opponent's next turn, copter reveals over here, takes out my copter. That's pretty unfortunate stuff. I'm gonna take another hit on my tank, end up getting 2-hit KO'd. Artillery moves forwards. I do not have information on it, so pretty good positioning from my opponent in those aggressive woods. This infantry moves forwards, reveals my medium tank, which lets the rocket take a hit at it. So I do know that my opponent is an indirect now. And since it wasn't an artillery, because I should have vision of it if it was, I could probably judge that it's a rocket in this area. Recon finishes off my infantry. Medium tank moves forwards and actually picks off my medium tank. So that kind of sucked. And then this Neo tank reveals itself to take a hit on my tank on the city. Big danger. Do you know what CO I'm playing, boy? Opponent built a medium tank infantry. Medium tank coming out on the left. My next turn. It's high society, baby. Criticize this one, YouTube frogs. How dare you talk about high society being bad. Peep this. Alright, my turn. I hit with the artillery from the fog on this tank. Get a good opening strike. I hit the medium tank with my copter and deal 5 damage. Oh, baby. Tank moves in, puts it at 3 HP. I finish off this tank with my artillery. Tank finishes off the medium tank. Recon pushes forward, picks up this infantry. 3 HP tank and this 6 HP tank will pick up the recon. I move over to the left, trying to find this rockets. Do find it in the woods. Neo tank moves forwards. You know it's coming. You know you love it. It's an Oko on the enemy Neo. Let's get that again in slow motion. Oh, disgusting. What's the damage calc actually? It must be nuts. I remember reading it and it was nuts. It was like 200. Okay, that's an infantry. It's like 150% on a Neo. It's not right. So I one-shot my opponent's Neo tank. I think we've seen this before. Deja vu. I've been here in this place before. Start pushing forward, capturing some aggressive properties, forcing my opponent once again to kind of choose between damaging my units back or taking property trades. I actually ended up using a medium tank to hit this copter, which was kind of crazy. This artillery is in a really solid spot. Definitely going to get some good counter hits, but I end up picking off some of the units there. My opponent's next turn comes in, and you know, they saw that Neo tank. We all saw that Neo tank. to resign. Can't blame him once again, you know? I think I just have a habit of winning with Kindle, dropping high society, and just one-shotting an enemy like big tank and just taking over the game. I think the left side of my opponent's not that bad here. I definitely have to pull some units over, but the right side's total disaster. They definitely can't interrupt both of these captures, and it's sacking this tank to get one. Like, right side is totally dead. This rocket can't really afford to attack without just dying next turn, so both of these units are probably going to be lost. And while the left side doesn't look that bad, it's just the map is in total chaos. I'm going to get a massive economic lead and just push through. I don't know what the capture limit is on this map, but 25. So getting these two, I only need 3 more. Alright, it's probably not reasonable to get capture limit anytime soon, but yeah. I mean, hyper upgrade's gonna get no value. I made sure to cleanly pick off every unit that I could. And yeah, it's definitely a big thing. Again, I want to stress against Andes. You really don't want to leave low HP units alive. It's very easy to do against other COs because obviously they're very irrelevant at low HP. As long as you don't give them the opportunity to run away and heal, you can generally ignore them. Unless you have to kill them to like break a wall or something. But against Andy, that's really not an option. You definitely want to make sure to pick off those units. And not let them get advantage of or too much value at a hyper upgrade. I think I did a really good job this game of limiting hyper upgrade, playing to my win con that I established early, of taking like some good aggressive fights, getting value out of Urban Blight to give myself a solid material lead, with some good artillery placement, and then using that to eventually manage to force an economic advantage in the long run, just based on having a material lead. My opponent being forced to build like heavy defensive units like rockets and stuff, and then eventually I was able to take over the game in the long run. So yeah, I think it was a pretty solid game. Definitely prefer this map than the original Small Garden. It's a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more nuanced to kind of like one side. I think it's an interesting map. There's a lot of like flow between the two different flanks and kind of like trying to pick the right opportunity to push a unit in a certain direction. I definitely enjoyed this game a lot, so I hope you guys did as well. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like. Feel free to comment some analysis down below, telling me about how bad High Society is and Urban Blight. I'm the #1 Urban Blight fan, and I'm writing you an email from urbanblightfans.com as a representative of the community. You are literally under arrest for even thinking about pressing High Society, never mind actually pressing it. I'll be pressing charges against you. But if you did enjoy, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you guys next time. My name has been Snitch. This has been CO Select. Bye!